What's going on, everybody? This is episode 3 of the Off Key Podcast, a show about music. I think that's our official title now. I'm Sean Berry.
Is on Apple.
My longtime colleague and very good friend Steve Strand is with me as well. We've been having a lot of fun doing this, so we're going to keep it going, and we hope you guys that are listening are enjoying discovering some new music with us. And if you we checked some of the downloads and numbers, and we saw we have listeners in Utah or people that downloaded in Utah, Virginia, and Texas. That's cool as hell. We think it's awesome. So if you're those listeners in Utah, Virginia, and Texas, thank you very much. If you folks out there have suggestions for us on some things to check out, go on the YouTube page, leave them in the YouTube comments, subscribe on Spotify. We appreciate it. We think it's really, really cool. So we're going to do our 3rd episode and talk about what we've been listening to this week and what's caught our attention. So from there, I mean, what's been your hot shit this week, Steve? What have you been listening to?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that we are creating playlists to go along with these episodes for the people that have asked.
This is true.
Yes.
This is true.
Because of copyright laws and all that, fair use stuff, we can't actually put audio in the show. So we are creating playlists to kind of go along with it for both movies, trailers, music, albums that kind of go along with what we talk about. So check that out if you have a chance. I think it'll help you get a better understanding of what we're talking about. And one of the things we talked about this week and we talked about last week and we're no longer going to talk about after this week is Strand of Oaks, because I've really been kind of digging into that a little bit more. I know we talked about it last week, but
and I dug into him a little bit more as well. So it's like, obviously I think there's always going to be that 2-week range of where we're kind of talking about an artist for roughly 2 weeks. If we talk about an artist for 3 weeks, it might be too much. We might need to keep
3 weeks
an every other week limit. It's like the urinal rule.
Yeah. Just have to space it out.
Yes.
Social distance our artists for the week.
Yes. That's true.
No, so actually we've been kind of getting a little bit more feedback from Instagram, and one of the guys that mentioned it was this guy, Tall Tim, real name unknown.
But shout out to Tall Tim. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and so he gave us a little feedback on Strand of Oaks about sort of some videos to check out on YouTube in terms of the Road to Lollapalooza and his Best Kept Secret Festival 2015 and 2017 performances. I got through the 2015 performance and the Road to Lollapalooza video, and what both of those did basically was give a great backstory of who Tim Showalter is as a person, especially circa 2015, because this is a guy who was basically cutting his teeth for the longest time, trying to kind of build a career, and he kept being told from everybody around him that, hey, you're the best kept secret, and somebody's going to discover you one day. And he was basically like, I still need to pay my bills. My wife's working 2 jobs. Like, I can't feed my family off of this stuff. But come 2015, he comes out with Heal. And that's when he kind of really takes off. And the Road to Lollapalooza video was kind of a good backstory to where he was in his life right then. And it kind of talks about his upbringing in terms of he grew up with rheumatoid arthritis. So it's a guy that was basically in pain and antisocial sort of all his growing up because he was just constantly uncomfortable. But it kind of...
Rheumatoid arthritis is no joke. Google it, because I actually did a report on it in health class like my sophomore year.
Oh, really?
Rheumatoid arthritis is it's not fun for people who have it. It can be very, very painful.
Yeah, but I think it kind of helped develop him into the person he was, because... like, you see a picture of him, and he kind of looks like a grungy Jesus, I think.
It's a very, very accurate way to describe him.
Yeah, and I think...
you mean no harm to your personal self-esteem.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But, basically, I had never heard an interview with him. I'd heard his music, and obviously the themes in them are pretty deep and dark and everything. So I would imagine a conversation with someone like him would be overly serious and maybe, not exactly the most cheerful. But of all the interviews and things that I listened to, he's one of the most genuine sounding people and most friendly sounding people I think I've ever met, which I haven't met him. But in terms of interviews,
But we will soon. We'll have him on the show by the 50th episode. So
that's our goal. Zach Brown,
yes.
still probably episode 5.
That would be awesome if that actually happens.
That's our goal. One day, Zach Brown, guest star.
Oh,
just get him on Zoom.
Foreshadowing.
So, but actually, that had kind of cut off my story with Strand of Oaks, is because I haven't listened to anything past 2015, which is Heal, which is what broke him out of the mold and got him into sort of a more popular level of stardom.
Gotcha.
And basically what happened after that was he put out another album that was called Hard Love, and that was more like the radio executives telling him what to do. Mm-hmm. He was trying to churn out more singles and everything and make it
put
more
out the hits.
Yeah. So basically it got more criticism from fans, I think. I listened through it and there is a notable difference. I don't think it's a bad album.
What's the name of the album again? I'm sorry.
It's called Hard Love. And
Hard Love.
Yeah. Gotcha. And it still received like positive reviews for most of it, but he was unhappy with it. And so what had happened is he had kind of gone on this streak of being away from home all the time. Drug use, alcohol use, all that stuff kind of began to rise. And
shocking.
Yeah. So basically after that, like he had entered 2018-19 kind of ready to walk away from music. And this is somebody who like lived with his records from a young age because you know, he didn't have a lot of friends because he was really like, you know, because of the arthritis and everything, which I don't know what that's like, but I'm assuming it's terrible. But, you know, so he's living out this sort of childhood dream of becoming a rock star, and it's not everything that it's cracked up to be. And he's like really worn out by it. So what had happened is like 2018-19 comes along and he puts out this album, Eraserland, which is the result of him being ready to kind of quit music and like that dream altogether. But the people from My Morning Jacket, which was, I think everyone but the singer, which I'm not super familiar with My Morning Jacket. I know one of their albums, but I don't know names, you know, by heart.
I won't hold that against you because I don't know either.
But it was like this sort of all-star cast of like them, Jason Isbell, and like I think some other people that they were like, you need to make more music. We will be your backing band. Because he also lost. Cool. Yeah, I mean, he lost his band, I guess, as a result of this.
Okay.
So it was just all these bad things that were falling apart, and the whole album is basically about coming back to loving music again. Did you hear the train?
Yes, we got the train. It took 3 episodes, but he lives by a train station, everybody. So if you ever hear the train whistle, it's not like a sounder or anything like that in a podcast. It's just he lives by a train and gets to hear it frequently.
Everybody forgets about Hobo Joe.
So yeah, you just heard the train. But anyway, so the album was about coming back to music and.
Yeah, and I mean the guy's Tim Showalter is the guy behind Strand of Oaks, and his whole backstory is just kind of filled with, unfortunately, these like kind of traumatic. Sad events, but every album seems to be about overcoming those events, and that's what's really unique, because even when Heal came out, he got in a horrific car accident like the week before he was supposed to record it, where he got basically they hit a patch of ice on Christmas Day and a semi-truck took out their car, but you know, and they went and recorded an album about it. Yeah, so he's had an interesting life, but I think Eraserland was great. There's a couple songs on there. Weird Ways is probably one of my favorites off the album. It's the first song off of it.
Okay.
Ruby was kind of more the single, and I think it's about his grandmother. But it's a lot of it's just about reflection and getting caught in the past and looking towards the future at the same time. Because the last track on the album, I think it's called Forever Chords, but that one it's like a 9-minute song, but it just builds and builds and builds, and there's like a huge payoff at the end, because it's weird because the album starts with Weird Ways and it's line in
Forever Chords.
Yeah, it's the last track on the album.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have the name right. It'll be on my list.
Yeah, but like the album opens with him singing the line, "I don't feel it anymore." And it's literally him saying like, I don't care about music anymore. And the album seems to be this evolution of him being pulled back into loving music.
That's cool.
And
That's
so
really
Forever
cool.
Chords is basically finding that love through music despite what had happened behind him, like in the past.
Yeah, prior.
So
that's really cool.
It's, and only knowing this backstory really elevates that album to a level that makes it really relatable.
I was going to say, it seems like it's working for you quite heavily.
Yeah. And so, I mean, really digging your nose in and knowing that backstory, I think is important. And one thing I did find in an interview about it was that he had gone to both nights of Fish at Wrigley. And
I was there.
Yeah.
I was at both of them.
It was an interview, and he actually, he said his like manager or his agent or whatever said like, hey, you're coming to the show. I have tickets to both nights. And he said he had never heard a Fish show before, but he's like, it was the equivalent of 30,000 people hugging you at the same time. Dude. He's like, it was a joyous concert. And he said he like immediately fell in love with Fish.
It's one of the best musical experiences. Seeing Fish live is something that only people that see Fish live can, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you have to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you know the band or not. Everybody should go to one Fish concert in their life and just at least experience it. If you don't get it or have a good time after that, then fine. But seeing one show is just worth the price of admission.
Oh, yeah.
And not just because of the band, but because of the people there.
Yeah.
It's a spectacle is the best way to describe it.
I only mentioned that mostly because he actually did a recording of Dirt for this particular magazine or interview or website, whatever.
Did he really?
Yeah, and it's like a 6-minute version of Dirt.
Well, that's like the first thing I'm going to listen to when we get done.
And it's more of like a psychedelic sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but it was kind of a cool rendition of a song that I personally, Dirt is one of my favorites of Fish.
I love that song. It's a great song.
Such a simple song, but like, still love it. And they don't play it too often, but every time I hear it, I just really get happy about it.
I'm really glad in our prior conversations to talking about kind of like things we were going to do this week, or kind of like the pre-show production discussions, that you did not mention that once, because I'm like jacked up now to listen to that.
I just found out about it last night. Just found out. I was going to tell you today, but
I'm very excited.
So I'll send you the link after this. Actually, just go YouTube it. It's
it's written down, and I'm very excited to listen to it.
Great. But so yeah, I mean, basically the other thing I took away from it was the Best Coast Festival really just proved them as a live band to me. Not Best Coast, but Best Kept Secret, because yeah, I mean, that's just the other thing that Tall Tim had recommended.
But you watched the one from 2015, right?
Yeah, and that was right after Heel came out. And that was 8 tracks of Heel.
So I watched the one from 2017 because we both did kind of dive into the band a little more, thanks to Tall Tim, one of our I think like 17 Instagram followers. But we appreciate all of them. But for me, at least, I didn't hate the live performance, but I didn't love it. I just thought it was okay. Yeah. And I didn't watch 2015, so maybe I need to go back and watch 2015 and kind of see the differences. Like I said, I didn't think the live performance I watched was bad, but it just like it wasn't. I guess it wasn't as good as I anticipated it being. But I dove more into the Strand of Oak stuff. Like Goshen 97, I think is a great song. I'm glad I got to explore some of his music a little bit more, because he's definitely somebody I want to, make sure I keep in mind as I move forward in, diving into music and things of that nature. But I did really enjoy several of his songs. So the live performance was not what I had hoped, but that's okay, man. And I can check out 2015 and maybe it's much better.
And I mean, that was one that, I checked out the set list for 2017, and it was there were 8 songs, I think, total, and half of them were from Hard Love, which was the album that didn't do as well. And the other half was from Heal, which was kind of the more popular album that came 2 or 3 years prior. And again, in 2015, you have a guy who's been playing clubs and losing money going on tour for years now. And now he's going to this thing. And the Best Kept Secret Festival is actually kind of a cool concept, because it's the idea of they sort of tie in lesser known artists with higher bills, because they want to kind of make it so that you don't know this band, but they deserve to be at kind of a higher bill. So basically he was given this chance, and I think he really was out there to take it, because he was hitting that festival circuit and getting a lot more exposure. But it was, the album itself has a lot of synthesizers, and it's very, soaked in this sort of moodier feel, I guess you could say. But the performance to me was a lot heavier, with like guitars, drums, and bass. Having a lot of fun, and it was very full, and it sounded bigger than it did on the album, I think.
The album itself.
Yeah, but I mean, he seemed like a guy who was up there like taking advantage of the moment, and really,
that's awesome.
And that's really what I think, like, that's what I got out of that whole thing, was that.
Yeah, I'll have to check out the 2015 performance then over the next like week or 10 days.
Yeah, it's only like 40 minutes, but
between episode 3 and episode 4, because I'm sure there will be an episode 4.
Yeah, but it made me appreciate songs on that album that I didn't necessarily appreciate before, in a new light. And I think this song, JM, at the end was a lot.
I will go back and I will listen to 2015, but we will not talk about it on next week.
The end of Strand of Oaks.
And we might talk about it in week 4.
Who knows?
We'll not talk about it in week 3.
But we're done with it for now. That's what, 15 minutes?
It's been right around there. So
that's the end of the show, folks.
No, we got another 45 minutes, even though we're trying to keep it shorter. It's still going to be another hour-long episode. Perfect. And we hope you enjoy it. But, what else did you check out? Was there anything?
So kind of one thing that kind of bounced back to what you mentioned last week was Chiddy Bang. And that was something I had checked out a couple times, just to kind of, like, it was a fun album. And I listened to, the preview was the one with kind of all the, it was sort of a collection of, they sample a lot of like early 2010s, around that era of indie rock bands. Then I know they sample Passion Pit, they sample MGMT, they sample Sufjan Stevens in that All Things Go song. So it's kind of cool, because you have this hybrid of hip hop and rap, which is something that seems like a world away from
Sufjan Stevens.
Yeah, and yet there's this sort of
All Things Go is a great song.
Oh, it's amazing.
The Chiddy Bang version. So I'm glad you liked it, though. I'm glad that's
well, it's fun. And like the other songs on there,
very major key. Like most of the stuff they do is very major key.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, even the songs that are like lyrically kind of have like he sings on the one album, I think the song's called Bad Day. Yes. But the chorus is every day ought to be a bad day for you, and I'm assuming he's singing about an ex-girlfriend.
Probably.
But despite the lyrical content of the song being rather exceptionally negative, the tone of the song still has like this upbeat vibe to it, and that contrast is very, I think, pleasing to the ear.
Yeah.
But if you've never checked out Chiddy Bang, I would highly recommend checking them out. Not to the royal we here out there listening.
Well, I think I was just listening to so much Strand of Oaks, I needed something to kind of really lift my spirits.
Yes, it sounds like that may have been the case.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fun, and that's what it was. And even that, like, because I think Chiddy Bang was a duo. I don't totally understand the balance of it, because he had, I don't know if the other guy was the producer or whatever, but
to my knowledge, it's basically he has his main producer, who I believe he refers to as Snafu, and I did not do any research on it.
Yeah.
and then you have the rapper himself. So,
Which
but I believe they're
actually
basically.
I don't know if he still does, but he owns the Guinness World Record for longest freestyle rap. And it's like 9 hours and some.
What?
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
He had to take 2 bathroom breaks to get through it.
But he was still rapping the whole time?
Yeah, it was like I don't know what the goal was, but the goal was probably to break the record for longest freestyle rap. But yeah, that's the dude from Chiddy Bang owns at least as of like 2013. I don't know if someone else broke it now, but it was like 9 hours.
I had no clue that was the case.
I don't know if there's a recording of that.
Just so I want to make sure we give people their proper credit here, because I really enjoy Chiddy Bang's music, but they are broken up currently from what I'm reading right now. And the rapper's name is Chidera Anamege, is what it looks like, Anamege. And then he works with his partner, whose name is Noah Barrison, and Noah works under the stage name Zafoon Jones. They're from Philadelphia, which actually, what's kind of interesting is from just, I don't know, the vibe I get from their music, Philadelphia kind of makes sense to me. That's interesting. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just making that shit up in my head. But seeing that,
I definitely got an East Coast vibe out of it.
But seeing that makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. And maybe our listeners will be like, you're an idiot. Shut up, Sean. But
I think they went to Drexel, I think is what it was. Drexel.
Okay.
Which I think is East Coast.
But I didn't know. It looks like they.
But it totally makes sense. It seems like the kind of, like, if you're going to be mixing sort of, at least in that era, like, Sufjan Stevens and these sort of indie bands, like, it seems sort of I don't know, like East Coast thing. I can imagine them growing up in like New York and then like hanging out in Greenwich Village and then getting exposure from sort of hipsters or something.
But I'm glad you liked it, because it's something that actually a bartender that I used to work with introduced me to, and I was unaware of them, and I've always kind of dabbled through it little by little and heard more and more songs by them, and it just seems like every song I hear by them I enjoy. So,
and they did have that Mind Your Manners song, which had Travis McCoy from Gym Class Heroes, which made me want to go listen to, I think, the Paper Cut Chronicles.
Paper Cut Chronicles?
Yeah. I don't care about anything they did after that. Like, that album.
I mean, even the Paper Cut Chronicles was like, it was good, but I didn't think it was like amazing, but it was good.
No, but like looking back on it, like it was one of the first hip hop acts that I think made that cross connect to the pop punk scene.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like definitely in that kind of realm.
Yeah, and I remember when they put out that Taxi Driver song, and it was just like a name dropping of every like.
It was very clever. It was entertaining.
Yeah, every Fueled by Ramen band that was on there that they could possibly reference.
Like Sunny Day Real Estate, whatever they said. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. Like I said, I mean, I listen to Kid Cudi radio a lot when I run.
Yeah.
And they're kind of in that same realm of like, I don't know what to call it, but whatever. That kind of vibe of hip hop, and that comes up on there a lot. And so, like I said, over the last like 5-7 years, I've just heard more and more of their songs, and I just really enjoy their music.
Yeah, and I think it was a very specific era of hip hop where it was that sort of, when Pursuit of Happiness came out, there was that sort of, I don't even know how to describe the sound, but it was kind of short-lived, I think. But it was that.
I know. I wish it was longer lived.
Yeah, but it was a lot of, like, it was hip hop that almost bridged the two like scenes of music in terms of the indie scene, with your sort of indie rock bands crossing over into that rap realm.
Well, yeah, and then you saw like B.O.B. do like the Vampire Weekend song.
And there was
which is awesome. I love that song. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I love that freaking song. Uh, but yeah. I mean, I'm glad you liked it. So, what else was there? Anything else on your kind of to-do list or
Yeah,
um,
I mean, I
shit?
dove into Beck a little bit. I listened to Hyperspace. I know we talked about that last week. The album was good. I think again, it's sort of there's this new trend that like everything has to go retro and synthwave, sort of this '80s sound and feel to it, where everything's got to have that synthesizer like
Mm-hmm.
beat to it.
The
Which
80s are coming back big, I feel like, in music.
yeah, and which is cool.
And
It's like
fashion too.
yeah, and
Or at least the early 90s are.
yeah, but I think that's kind of where that kind of fell. It to me it meandered a little bit. Like it never, like it wasn't to say I didn't enjoy it, but it didn't really go anywhere for me.
Okay, that's
Um,
fair. I mean, everybody's different, you know,
yeah,
and
again, it was just like a recreational listen. It was something that I was cooking dinner and listening to it.
mhm.
So it was kind of in the background, but
Okay,
again, enjoyable. I liked it.
yeah,
I liked the sound of it and everything, but
yeah,
you know, there was never that moment where you like you'll listen to an album and then all of a sudden you kind of hear that moment where your ears perk up and you pay attention.
yeah. You never had that kind of like, oh, I got to make sure I'm really focused on this moment.
Yeah, it was like the whole album went by and then I realized, oh, okay, it's done. Like it
Okay,
just sort of stayed at
I
one
did mention that
plane.
the album had a very nice flow to it.
Yeah, and because that's the thing is it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, and it could
Yeah,
also just be like I'm not giving it the listen that it deserves.
yeah, no, and I get both sides of it completely.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
but I did end up checking out Morning Phase. I think we should talk about more about that later. Uh,
or
but
now,
no, well, like the stuff. So what I listened to this week, uh, like what I thought was the most unique listen or like the best thing I listened to or most interesting was I again went to just like a top 50 list or like I went to I researched the best album so far of 2020. That's what it was.
yeah,
And I saw like Fiona Apple on there, and I think I'm gonna put that on my list for like this coming week or whatever. Um, and I saw some other artists on there, but uh, I checked out an artist named Perfume Genius, who I've never heard of in my life. Uh, but I was like, okay, for whatever reason, I was just like, that's who I'm picking. Like the name is intriguing enough that I want to see what's going on here. So I put the album on, and it was very, very unique. It was one of the most interesting albums I've heard in a while in terms of the range from song to song. It has like a very indie vibe at times. It has a very almost David Bowie vibe, like at times in terms of like this slow, almost like glam rock kind of thing going on.
nice.
The vocals, like his singing, his range is shockingly impressive. Uh, it was just a very unique album, and the production value on the album I thought was really well done. And like I said, just the range of tones you kind of get. There is kind of a connection. I feel like, you know, you can kind of, there's times in each song that the vibe is the same or similar to previous songs. But overall, I did feel like there's some songs you go from one track to the next, and it almost sounds like it might be a different album or perhaps a different artist. But um, the artist goes by the name of Perfume Genius. I'm gonna pull up his bio real quick because I
Is
want to.
is that
Go
the
ahead.
only album that he's put out?
No, he's got other albums too. So his name is Mike Hadrius or Hadreus.
We changed the name of the show to Two Old Men Find Out About Music.
I would call it like middle-aged.
Oh yeah, all right.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't say old yet, but we're not 40, so.
It's true.
But anyways, so his name is Mike Hadreus, and says his music spans fragile piano ballads and swaggering glam rock as he explores sexuality, homophobia, domestic abuse, and with brutal and often poetic honesty. I will say lyrically, some of his songs, like you listen to them and there is like some culture shock there at times. And it was just very interesting. Like the whole album kept my attention the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some songs on there that I thought were really good. There were like one, I would say probably my favorite song on the album was, I think the song is called On the Floor. I think it's like the 6th song on the album. And then Describe, which is the 2nd song on the album. Both of those songs are kind of different in their, like from each other. But then the other 2 tracks that I really thought were interesting were the track Jason and the track Same Dream. But Jason was probably the most interesting to me, and I say that because when I heard the song, I no longer thought it was him singing. I thought it was a female vocalist that like he invited to sing on the record.
Okay.
And so I did some brief research today. On the track, and from what I could tell, it's still him singing. So I think it's just like a testament to like his vocal range. Like I thought it was a woman singing in a very high voice.
Was it?
Go ahead.
Did it sound manipulated in terms of like auto-tune?
No, it did not. It did not. That's the other thing. Like
just really hitting those falsetto notes.
Yeah, like I didn't catch a lot of that in the album. Like I felt like, and maybe I'm wrong. I very well could be, but I don't think I am. But if I am, someone please let me know. If you're listening and you're a fan of his or whatever, please tell me I'm wrong. I'm totally okay with it. But I just thought vocally it sounded so high and so different that I honestly thought it was a different person singing the track. But those were like the 4 tracks I thought to me were the most enjoyable or most memorable on the album. It's like 13 songs. And by the way, the album is called Set My Heart on Fire Immediately, which I also thought was an interesting name for an album.
And that's the one with the black and white photo on the front.
Yeah, I had posted it to like our Instagram account when I was listening to it. But I think he's an artist worth checking out. I think he's very interesting. Like I said, like he definitely gives me that kind of Bowie vibe at times. And Bowie is an artist that like I've listened to but haven't really checked out, I feel like, or given full credit to what I need to. Like I know a good amount of Bowie songs, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not as many as maybe I should for someone who enjoys music as much as I do. But I definitely think the album's worth listening to. So if you're an indie fan and his vocals, he uses his voice as an instrument exceptionally well. Mm-hmm. Like sings very melodically. It's almost, some singers, obviously you hear them sing sometimes, and not that they're not singing, but it doesn't necessarily kind of, I feel like, fill out the song or bring more to the recording itself.
Yeah.
I feel like most of his vocals on,
I'm just saying, like, if the vocal range is from C to D to E to D to D, like, it's just jumping between 3 notes, and it's not really an instrument.
I feel like, his vocal range is very wide and used very well as an instrument. So it was really interesting to listen to. It was something I never thought, if we weren't doing this show, I would have checked it out. So I'm happy that the show is driving things like this for me, and I'm learning more about, artists like that. And so just a little bit more on him though. He was born in Des Moines, Iowa, but raised in Washington. And it's basically, he just started recording music in 2008. And he's had a very kind of rough life. He was bullied a lot for being gay. And that drove him to kind of the arts, like painting and music. And then it sounds like, from what I read briefly on him in the, early or late 2000, like whatever, the aughts, in the late aughts, he started really diving into his music. And doing more stuff. So maybe I'll check out another album from him next week or listen to a little bit more. But like I said, I think it's worth a listen. And, so check it out. The name is Perfume Genius, and the album is called Set My Heart on Fire Immediately.
I'll definitely check that out.
But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, and I think when you can find that balance of abstract and accessible, which I think some artists can do, because sometimes you lean too far to one way where you're trying to be experimental and you're way out there, and you really have to kind of open up your ideas of music to kind of pull, whatever it is they're trying to say out of it.
Yeah.
But when you can kind of find that balance, and I think Bowie was somebody who could do that, where you push that envelope. And from the very little I know about Bowie, but you can be artistic, you can express, yourself, and you can push the boundary and envelope of your sonic, expressions while still following certain, certain patterns of music that people find relatable. And so I think that's what people look for, because sometimes when you kind of go too far away from that verse chorus, bridge, outro sort of pattern, people just you can't relate to it as well, because
it's not as comforting to the ear, so it's harder to accept. And there are some songs on the album that, I would say, from what I remember, there are multiple songs on the album that don't necessarily have that pattern. But I think he does a good job where the melody kind of keeps you there.
Yeah.
I guess kind of structurally or like mentally, it keeps you there. It's focused. So, even if you don't listen to the whole album, I would say the 4 tracks I listed are worth checking out. And I think you'll kind of get the range and the vibe that I'm talking about just from listening to those 4 songs. But On the Floor was probably my favorite. It's a little more like, it's got kind of a poppy, like funk. There's almost like a funky vibe to the melody. But then he had some songs on there that are like really slow. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It just means they're much slower paced and very vocally prominent, where it's kind of almost just like maybe just a drum, a piano, and then his voice, or that's maybe more so what you notice. But very interesting artist, like I said. So it was cool. I'm glad, like I said, the show is getting us to dive more into stuff like this and just take random chance and see if we like something. And then if we like it, we talk about it. So,
yeah.
And speaking of, to go back to Strand of Oaks,
we can never escape.
And My Morning Jacket. This is just a Strand of Oaks show now. That's all it is. But you had mentioned My Morning Jacket, and because of Tall Tim, the Instagram user that we were kind of chatting with via Instagram about music, which was cool. It's awesome. I think it's great that we have that ability in the world today. I went for a walk one night just because I was bored and had nothing to do, and I put on I've known about My Morning Jacket for a while. I've never really dived into a lot of their music. Yeah. I've listened to some of it at times, but not with a whole lot of focus. So I figured, I was like, I'm going for a walk. My Morning Jacket was kind of on my mind. So I looked up what people ranked as their best album. That album, according to the interweb, the collective internet, was Z, which came out in 2005. Yeah. And have the song Off the Record on it, which if you're new to the show, you've never heard the song Off the Record. You've probably heard it, maybe never knew you heard it or knew who it was by. Super catchy song, very much reminds me of The Clash, and I love The Clash. But I thought the album was really enjoyable. I didn't really take any notes on it because I honestly forgot I listened to it until tonight because I had listened to so much other stuff, and it was like right after we recorded the last episode. So I will probably check out more My Morning Jacket this week in terms of just like straight, just listening and trying to dive into their albums.
Yeah.
Because they, to my feeling is they kind of have this weird vibe of almost a jam band, but not really, but very much an indie band that I can totally get into. So I'm excited to listen to more of their music with more of a kind of like conscious focus, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and actually, the only album I really know by them either is Z. Because back in college, someone gave me like a mix CD that was just burnt, and it was all these songs, and I think some other random ones that were out of order. And I remember
Uh-huh.
listening to it for the longest time, and the one song that I didn't know the name of because again, it was just a burnt CD with like track 1, track 2, track 3 when I burnt it onto my
Uh-huh.
computer.
By the
Um,
way, if you don't remember what burning CDs are, kids, if we have any young listeners out there, um, you used to literally have to download tracks and you couldn't just like stream them.
illegally.
Yes, illegally, and hopefully not get a horrible, wretched virus
Yeah.
on the computer that your parents just bought for you, and or hopefully bought for you, depending. Um, but you know, hopefully not get a wretched virus on your computer, and then burn them to a blank CD, uh, which was similar to recording them on a tape off of the radio back in the day.
It would inevitably get scratched and damaged and skip and be annoying.
And then you would hopefully wash it off, and oh, it's working again. And but those were great times too. I loved that part of my life.
Yeah. But the one thing I will remember is that my favorite song off that album is Gideon. I think it's the third track officially off of Z.
Okay.
But
Um,
the build up and the end and the outro of that song is just so like great, and I love it.
Now that you mention that, I remember early in my walk, there was a song, and I couldn't remember the name of it, but that actually sounds familiar,
Mhm.
where I pulled my phone out because I wanted to make sure I knew what track it was. And I think that may have been it. So when we're done with this, I'm going to go back and listen to it and make sure. But I think this is ringing a bell. So
It's funny because 2 or 3 weeks ago, I wrote this song down as one that I wanted to talk about. And oddly enough, out of all of the albums in the world,
I know, right? It came up naturally.
Yeah. But
this is not scripted. We're not fucking around here. This was not made up. We didn't plan this. So
nope.
That's awesome.
I don't think we can script it. I can't read. But no, Gideon, check it out. It's amazing. Its song will like make your
change
morning.
Your whole life.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, man.
I think.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, in terms of like new music and really kind of pushing into to new things, and this isn't actually totally new, but one thing I've really been digging into the last week was it's a group called Hampton.
Okay.
So I don't know. Have you heard of them?
I've heard the name many times. I don't know if I've heard any songs from. I may have heard one, but not known it was their song. But I have heard Brockhampton's name through all the concerts I've gone to, festivals, things like that. I've heard it mentioned many, many times. But please continue.
Yeah, and the one that I got into was Saturation 2, which I think in 2016 or 17, they put out Saturation 1, 2, and 3 all in the span of like a year and a half. And it was like Brockhampton is this group of about 15 guys, and it's led by Kevin Abstract, who's sort of the leader of the group, I guess you could say, and founder. And it's hard to keep them all in check because I don't know all of them and I don't know enough about them to really say who is who and who does what. You. I know, but it's sort of
bullshit.
But I listened to Saturation 2 and then I watched a live performance of them, and it's like 6 or 7 guys up on stage, but they really just like, as far as like modern day rap groups, and they call themselves a boy band, which I find really interesting because
that's very funny.
Yeah. As somebody like there's
it's
a show,
all guys, right?
It is. So technically it's a boy band. And I think Kevin Abstract, like at the time that they founded that group, Brockhampton, was 2014. And so I think the guy who founded
they haven't been around that long.
No. And so they actually met on a Kanye West message board. And like some of the guys
that is fucking awesome.
Yeah. So some of the guys kind of knew each other, but it was like the name of the website was Kanye to the, and then it's just like blank. But
that is amazing.
Yeah, so I think some of the guys actually knew each other in real life, like just a few of them. But the whole group encompasses, I think, about 15 guys. And it may have been smaller to start and expanded. And I know one of the guys, the guy who's actually on the cover of the Saturation 1, 2, and 3, I think, Amir Van, was actually, and he's probably one of my favorite of the rappers on the album. In terms of his content and basically what he says, was actually kicked out of the band in I think 2018 or 19, last year maybe, for sexual misconduct and everything.
Disappointing.
Yeah, and so it sucks because it's a guy who like has quoted many times about his like rough upbringing, in terms of like selling drugs, being arrested, like all these different things, and then he finds this group like Hampton, and they're like a fraternity that just, you know, puts on concerts. These guys seem like they're all best friends, and it's just a really cool dynamic, and there's something like really creative about what they put together, and there's an energy to it. And I think that's why they put out like 3 albums in the course of like a year and a half, 2 years. And like reading about it, it was just because
if you have 15 people,
yeah,
and like, there's a lot of creativity going on there.
Well, even some of the lines in their lyrics are basically talking about how, yes, this might sound all the same, but right now we're at such a creative high in terms of the stuff that we're putting out, that we don't want to stop the momentum of what we're doing.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And so it's also cool because
I've never, like I said, I've never listened to them, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I honestly, I've been digging it. I think the set was from some festival, I think, put on by Tyler, the Creator, but it was a live set, and I think their set got cut short because it was only 30 minutes, but it was just like the dudes came out and like it was just high energy the entire set. Like, I don't know, there's a dynamic between all of them, and because they range from a different set of backgrounds, I guess, like, you know, it's just they really kind of come together, but they look like they're having a ton of fun. Yeah, I just really, really dug that album. The other thing is that they kind of rap about things that you don't normally rap about in the modern day rap scene. Like, for instance, Kevin Abstract, the leads, the guy who basically founded it, is gay. Okay. And he raps about it, and there's one line, I think it was in the song called Junkie, where he basically talks about why you always rap about being gay. He's like, because there's no other rappers that are gay. And he's like, basically this idea that, you know, they're expressing things that are kind of very personal. It's not all just about like, you know, Bentleys or, you know, money or whatever. And some of it is, like, some of it is because that's just rap music. But like when you start digging deeper into the lyrics, they really get into certain things. Like they get into sort of just,
it's just more personal.
Yeah. Like, some of them like rap about like people womanizing and treating women poorly. Like, usually that's kind of the flip of what you traditionally think about rap music in terms of like women are objects in rap music, but these guys are kind of talking about like treat them with respect. Like that's my mother, that's my sister, that's my cousin. Like, so, you know, of what I know that I've dug into the last week, I fully plan on going forward and listening to more of their stuff and following them.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
But again, it's like, never would have dug this stuff out. Never would have. I've seen that album for 3 years on like best of lists and stuff, and I've never given it a shot because I'm just like, oh, it's probably mumble rap or. But it truly, and I think the beats and the production. It was just, you know, it wasn't just your traditional generic beat. Like there was some creativity to it. And I think, again, when you put 15 guys together in a room, you're gonna get
That's awesome, man. I said the same thing, and I hope we continue to say this every week. I hope every week we're like, I'm having fun diving into shit I normally wouldn't dive into. Like you and I have always been talking about music for years, and we've always looked to each other in terms of like finding new stuff to listen to. And now we've created a very forceful way for us to find new stuff to
Yeah.
listen to. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And speaking of that, um, something really cool happened this week that like you weren't aware of until I told you about it later when I said check the messages on Instagram. Um,
Yeah.
but so I had put out an Instagram post just kind of talking about what we had talked about on the show and hashtagging it with all the bands that we had mentioned on the previous episode. And I got a notification saying somebody named MonsterHeart had liked our post. So I sent them a message on Instagram just saying, thanks for liking the post. I hope you have time to listen to the podcast. We're having a lot of fun making it. We hope you like it. And I clicked on this person's profile and found that they were an artist, a musician of their own. And I love the name, by the way. I think MonsterHeart's a dope name. But she's from Austria. So I don't know. It's the internet is crazy. The world of social media. It's awesome that we got to make this connection. And so I saw that she had like her album out on Spotify via her Instagram. So I was like, well, this whole show is about discovering new music. So whatever, like I'll go check this out. So I found her most popular song, or the newest song was called Flowers. And so I sent her a message. I put the song on real quick and I go, is this your song with the dolphin video? And it's this girl with, like playing with this dolphin, like at like almost like a SeaWorld, that type of thing. And the song
It looks like a camcorder, like
yeah, it was
video.
great. It was great. I thought the video was awesome. But the song is called Flowers. The artist's name is MonsterHeart. She's a very good singer. It's a very simple song. It's kind of this like synth pop. It's definitely got an 80s vibe to it. And it definitely seems like that's something I'm noticing so much just from doing this show is how much the vibe, that tone of like some of the 80s music and early 90s stuff that we were very young to hear when we were kids, but we definitely heard it, and it's something I recognize, obviously, like the tone of it.
Yeah.
But I thought the song was awesome. So I just messaged her and I said, is this your song? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, don't take this the wrong way, but like, it's really simple. And I think it's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool to make that connection and like to find that somebody that liked our post was making these songs and making this record. And I listened to a couple other songs and I enjoyed those too. Like, so shout out to MonsterHeart. Thanks for following and hopefully you listened, you listened last week and you listened this week.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. And I know after I had mentioned it to you, you were like, dude, that's awesome. And you listened to the song too. So
I really liked it too. I think it was, and I'm very curious to see if that music video is actually a video of her from younger or if it was a modern day video that was shot on like an old
high 8 cam.
Yeah, because I don't really know, but it was because everything about it looked retro, like the Giants logo on the hat of the girl.
Yeah, dude, and it still had the like the cable kind of waves getting in the way, like almost like when you
like adjust your tracking on the VHS.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I actually I was trying to find a little bit more because I know that I think the other song I liked was called Salam.
Okay.
I think it was on Spotify, and I checked a couple of those out too. But yeah, it was good, and I think it's at like the 2-minute 10-second mark or something. It kind of cuts into like I don't know if it's like a minor tone or whatever, but on the because again, not a musical professional.
On Flowers or on
Flowers, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, when it gets to the bridge.
Yeah, and that part, like I just really everything, especially right after that, like onward. And I actually found like a short little interview that she did on like a blog post from I think 2012.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and because I don't want to get anything wrong, especially if she ends up listening to this. But she described her music as graveyard pop because she's always using organs, and I think it's the same person. Again, it was kind of a random blog post, but it looked like the same person.
Yeah.
But I thought it was such like a really good description of the music, because graveyard pop and like, because there's sort of organs, there's
Yeah.
synthesizers.
No, I can definitely, like, from listening just to Flowers, I can.
Yeah, and there's actually another song that's called like MonsterHeart. Like,
yeah, there's a song called MonsterHeart. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's like Bad Company's Bad Company.
Yeah. So which came first, the band or the song?
But I thought it was really good, and it was really weird. Like I said, like I saw that she had like liked the post, and I saw that she was obviously creating music.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I might as well check it out. So I did. But it was really cool.
Well,
and go ahead.
I was gonna say the other thing that kind of led to that, and I mean, not to cut you off, but there was.
No, you're fine.
Another guy, Half Man Sings, was the account. So I was digging around Spotify trying to find Half Man, which is the band, and the album was called Room to Grow. And it was sort of this Americana folk, you know, some sad songs. Oh,
right up your alley, Steve.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Americana folk? It cuts to the core of me, Baxter.
Yeah. But, I mean, based on like the pictures, and again, don't know the guy, just give my honest opinion of what I could interpret. But he seems like a tall guy with kind of a deeper voice, got the long beard. And the song New Year Headlock was the first track off of Room to Grow, which is, I think it was about 8 songs, maybe a little EP, but it was, I think lyrically in terms of that storytelling and that scene setting that folk does so well, and that's the thing that I'm drawn to.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I have always talked about how much we enjoy that.
Yeah, because if you can basically put headphones on, listen to a song, and you're in the room with the characters that are in the song, to me that's successful. And
yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy to do.
Yeah, and so that first track is kind of, it sort of seems to describe like a lonely person opening a $7 bottle of wine, like, and it's like, again, it's sad Americana folk songs, but it's really something that I'm drawn to, and I love those sad songs.
Yeah, I know.
So Half Man, I think is the name of the band. Half Man Sings was the guy who was on Instagram. But again, it's cool that, you know, in today's day and age, between Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Instagram, all these new bands that are up and coming that you can discover just by reaching out and talking to somebody is really cool. You know, because
it is super cool. And I don't want our show, obviously, or whatever this is, to become an Instagram shout out podcast. But it was super cool to have those experiences. It was very cool. And obviously the show's new, so maybe this is something that happens more regularly, but it was very cool, especially when honestly they were tracks that we really enjoyed. And I didn't listen to the Half Man Sing stuff, so that's written on my list and I'll have to check it out. But it was cool to have those experiences. And going back to, you were talking about Brockhampton. Last week we had talked about Run the Jewels, and so I went and listened to some of Run the Jewels 4. I didn't finish the whole album, but just compared to like another thing I listened to this week, and we've talked about how we don't want this show to be like a bashing of records or albums or things of that nature. I had looked up, like I said, the best so far of 2020, and the Future album, which I can't remember the name of right now, and I apologize, but Future's album was on there. And so I was like, I've heard the name before. I was like, I'll check it out. I didn't enjoy it at all. That's all I'm
High Off Life.
High Off Life, yes.
Yeah.
Which I like the name of the album, by the way. But the album did not get me high off life in any way, shape, or form. But that's me, man. That's me. And but
he's been on those lists before.
Yeah.
And again, it's not personally up my avenue, and I don't like the overly auto-tuned. Again, don't know how to describe it, but it's that sort of hi-hat, like.
Yeah, like trap beat.
Yeah, and so like kind of skip through the first 4 tracks because I know once you had sent that to me, I was like, maybe I'll give it a listen. Maybe I'll see something different. And and maybe it's just because I'm getting older and don't get like the new trends. But yeah, I had a hard time sort of like seeing and distinguishing, because a lot of those songs were the same songs that were on previous albums of his that I have like just briefly, entertained for a little bit. But and not everything's gonna be up your wheelhouse. It's not gonna always sound good.
Dude. Not at all.
But again, you tried it.
Yeah, and like I know more about it, and that's cool. And dude, there were songs that I didn't think were like, great. I thought they were okay, and then there were other songs that I'm like, I didn't really enjoy this at all.
Yeah.
But when I compare like that stuff, that genre of hip hop to like what Run the Jewels is doing, like we grew up in an era where, like Dr. Dre and was doing so much musically, and yes, there's a lot of samples in it, but like melodically what he was doing, and there was so much more, I felt like narrative rap going on. Not that there wasn't talk about drugs and money and cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But just the way that the songs were written lyrically, I feel like were so much different and had so much more of a flow behind them that, I don't know, the stuff today is harder for me to really, like, I'm comparing it to, what I would say or a lot, I feel like a lot of people would say, like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, like that stuff they were doing in the early 90s, Tupac, Biggie, that stuff of hip hop legends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to grow up with that. So I feel like it's very hard to compare, or to really like, maybe the bar was set too high for us. I don't know.
It's true, but I mean, it's also the stuff that, is topping the charts right now. Those are the...
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm a middle-aged white guy, so what do I know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, because I've never really, couldn't really get into that, like Travis Scott, like Future, like Lil Uzi Vert, like that, like that stuff to me, it doesn't connect. Like I like trying to dig into lyrics a little bit. And if it's not the lyrics that get me, I want to hear sort of like a more unique beat and production behind it. And you would get people kind of doing that, and they would really push boundaries in terms of like what they would sample and what they could use, especially back in the day. And I don't know if you want to get into the good copy, bad copy thing, but like Beastie Boys used to sample things like all the time. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely, man.
But you had to like pick out certain sounds and really kind of build this sound out of things that you piece together. So there was like thought that went into it, as opposed to basically Pro Tools, which allows you to basically just hit a loop, like hit a drum machine, and just let it go and then rap over top of it.
Well, and that's the thing, like when I've listened to from what I heard from Run the Jewels before, and then listening to like the Run the Jewels 4 album, or like I think I got through the first like 6 or 7 tracks of it, but just like instantaneously through like the first 4 or 5 songs, I was like, this is exponentially better than most of the hip hop I've heard in the last like 5 years.
Oh yeah. Well, because it makes you think.
Yeah, well that, and like I've always loved Killer Mike from the moment I heard The Whole World by Outkast. Like he's on that song, and when I heard that song,
never knew that.
Yeah, that's Killer Mike in the third. I believe it's the third verse.
I can picture it in my head right now. Yeah, I did not know that.
The third verse is Killer Mike, and I literally was like, "That verse is awesome. Who is this?" And it was Killer Mike. And now I feel like Killer Mike is, I always really that opened my eyes to him, and it's not like I followed him throughout his career or anything like that, but I think it's awesome that he's having so much success with Run the Jewels. But it's just,
I think he's one of the most respected people in terms of that, the rap scene right now, in terms of what he says and what he has to say. And I think people of many different walks of life stop and pay attention when someone like him starts singing. And I think that's something that's really cool about the Run the Jewels albums.
Yeah, but and I appreciate you for bringing up Run the Jewels 4 because it was not something I had thought of recently.
Yeah.
So it was fun to go and listen to it. And I forget what the first track on the album was. I know we had talked about it last
Yankee
week.
and the Brave, I think, was.
But it was the one you said, it makes you want to like run through a brick wall. And it was awesome. The first track on the album was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like most of the stuff I listened to this week. I did check out the Beck Morning Phase album.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say, sorry, before we jump onto that, I do want to say that I know Ed has mentioned that we should watch Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix.
Oh, on Netflix, yeah.
And I think just sort of this conversation that we're having, just to see how hip hop got from there to here, because it is a cool journey. And I mean, I haven't seen the show, but to get a better understanding of where it went from, the hippity hop stuff of the 80s.
Oh my God, we've never sounded so white.
Of course. But and then you move into the gangster rap of the 90s, and then, sort of I don't know, I think Nelly, but as it's progressed through these different things, because nothing has sounded so different. Guitars and drums and bass, yes, they change, but because with hip hop and rap, you have, a computer and tools at your disposal to create different sounds that you can't make really with different genres of music. If you have a band that has guitars, bass, and drums, you're kind of limited to what you can make. I'm not saying completely, but there's room for a lot of change over the years, I think. Listening to 80s rap music versus today's rap music, I think there's just such a difference that all I'm saying is that we should probably, shout out to Ed, go listen to Hip Hop Evolution, because I know he has mentioned
or
that.
watch Hip Hop Evolution on Netflix, right? It's on Netflix?
Yeah. So
I believe Anthony Shane has told me to watch Hip Hop Evolution as well.
Okay. So getting back to the Morning Phase stuff.
But yeah, I listened to Morning Phase. I still didn't listen to Sea Change. What I heard from Morning Phase, I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a very accurate name for the album. It is the type of album, on an early Sunday morning, I could very much see myself listening to.
The first time I listened to that album, I was hungover driving to work in the morning as the sun was coming up, and it was just sort of the perfect opening. Yes, Sunday morning, it basically, yes. That's
I'm surprised it didn't make you fall asleep and thankfully not crash your car.
No, I was being safe. I wasn't seriously hungover, but it was I'm tired. I don't want to be driving.
Yes. But yeah, Morning Phase, I thought it was really good. What I listened to, it's definitely our conversation about, hyperspace from last week and, going into this week has made me appreciate Beck even more, which it's really fun to kind of go from album to album and see kind of the overall tone. It's weird because I almost felt like Morning Phase almost had the vibe of an acoustic version of Hyperspace, if that makes any sense. The tone, the overall tone of Hyperspace had a similar tone to Morning Phase, but Morning Phase was almost done more acoustic guitar wise.
Yeah.
Whereas Hyperspace was almost done more keyboard and synth pop tone, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm crazy and I sound stupid, but I don't know.
Maybe it's the same artist with a different set of tools. I mean, from what I had heard from Sea Change,
I still didn't listen to Sea Change. I still haven't done it.
The intro to Sea Change was so much it was a similar feeling I got listening to the intro of Morning Phase in terms of a lot of that sort of instrumentation, and the album kind of had that sort of dreamy daze to it.
Dreamy, I feel like, is a very good way to describe Morning Phase.
Yeah, and I think my favorite track on that album was probably Blue Moon.
Okay.
And the reason I got into it was it kept getting recommended every time I threw on like a War on Drugs radio, like recommended you might like kind of things. It always it would like show up in those playlists. I would put on Pandora and Blue Moon would almost like always show up on that. So that's how I kind of got into Beck and Morning Phase and everything. But you were right in terms of the instrumentation that he basically did a lot of that. If you go on Wikipedia and it's like the track listing of who's done what, like there's a list of like 20 different instruments he plays on that album.
Oh, for Sea Change and Morning Phase?
For Morning Phase, at least. I don't know about Sea Change, but
yeah, like I said, as far as I know, like he kind of does like everything on his own. But yeah, I mean, I listened to that and enjoyed it thoroughly. And then I'm trying to think, was there anything else new that we didn't talk about that you had listened to? Like meaning non-homework assignments, nothing kind of being rehashed from last week that you listened to.
Jeff Rosenstock's No Dream.
Okay.
So I know we've talked about Jeff Rosenstock in the past, and for those of you who don't know, he came from like sort of Bomb the Music Industry was the ska punk band that he came out of early on, which also had, I think, Laura Stevenson in it. And there's like a high energy, like ska punk band that came out, and then he went solo and he put out the albums We Cool, Worry. He dropped Post, I think.
Worry was the one that you had told me about that I had listened to not too long.
Love Worry. Yeah, Worry's amazing.
And I thought Worry was I thought it was really good. It's funny because that type of conversation that we had is kind of what started to stem a lot of the thought of doing this show.
Yeah. Well, because it was such a I think everything was on the right level in terms of the energy, it was weird enough, but it still was like just fun. It was accessible. It was funny. Because I think Jeff Rosenstock as a person is very sarcastic and very like in his lyrics, just a funny person, I think. And if you watch him play a show, just like the banter that he has between sets is pretty worth watching. But so yeah, No Dream he put out not too long ago.
Is that from like 2019?
No, it's from this year.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
it's about new music, so I'm glad it's from 2020.
Yeah. So I mean, but he churns out music, it seems like nonstop. It seemed like Post only came out like a year and a half ago. What he does is he has like no promotional lead up. He just drops albums.
Oh, okay.
So I know No Dream I think came out like that, but there's a couple songs in there that I really liked. Scram was an album or a song I liked. The last track on the album, Ohio Turnpike. But they're all spelled. Ohio Turnpike was the last. But they're all spelled like weird, so you have to kind of like.
Well, I'm going to look up the album itself. That'll be on my homework assignment for this week.
Yeah.
So,
but no, we
are getting to that point. I think we are just over an hour again.
Of course. Do we dig into the mailbag? We'll make a quick mailbag run.
Mail time. Go ahead, man. It's our show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
We'll edit it and post.
Don't like it. I'm sorry, but we're trying to. We go 10 days without really discussing what we listen to, except for here and there. So
the 4th of July made it hard. So hopefully this time will be more like week to week and maybe many episodes in between.
That's a good thought process, but I'm gonna just go ahead and say that might not happen.
Probably, but without getting too much into it, let's just go into the mailbag. So it's Matt Levy's pick of the week.
Oh,
it's always Matt.
3 times. Matt Levy is literally like a co-host of the show without ever showing up.
So he had mentioned the song, the Menzingers Gates,
Yeah,
which was off of The Impossible Past,
yeah.
which to me is not my favorite Menzingers album. I think After the Party has got to be my favorite one. I know a lot of people who listen to On the Impossible Past really think that's kind of like the pinnacle, but unfortunately I just missed out, I think, when that came. But that's the one that has like Ava House, Obituaries on it. But there's like a certain like sound of nostalgia to it, maybe.
On the Impossible Past is my favorite record of theirs, without a doubt.
Is it? I'm a big fan of After the
I
Party.
think so. I mean, and I spent a lot of time. I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, you just froze up. There was like a crazy delay. So we apologize to our listeners for whatever the hell just happened. But that's what happens when you're working with the internet sometimes. So on the Impossible Pass, having spent a lot of time at the gym listening to Menzingers albums while I'm on the treadmill, because as a band you recently introduced me to, and I'm so happy we went and saw them live. It was so much fun. But that is my favorite. I think my favorite record, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely kind of looking at it again. I think I'm just the thing that After the Party really kind of hit home with me for is just the fact that the track opens with "What are we gonna do when our 20s are over?"
Which is a great song, an absolutely fantastic song.
And it was like right after my 30th birthday.
The blues riffs that carry that song are great. Like, as somebody that plays a lot of blues music,
Yeah.
Guitar wise, like, I absolutely love that song.
Yeah.
Love that song.
And I think there's just a lot of things that was my gateway into Menzingers, and so it's kind of like a first love. You just
funny that you call them the Menzingers, because I call them the Menzingers.
Maybe that's how it is. I honestly have never looked.
I don't know.
I could be right, could be wrong. Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't even know what it means. What is a Menzinge?
I don't know. Is it like a lozenge?
Menzing? I don't know. Menzingers? Menzingers.
Like, anyway.
Man jokes? Maybe? Never thought of it. Now it's going to bug me. I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Anyways.
I have a personal connection to that album in terms of everything on that album was about, again, like I hit 30. The whole album's about them basically turning 30 and like realizing we're playing in a punk band singing about younger things. Like, let's sing about older people things. Like,
yeah.
I know another track on that album is called Lookers.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of like we were both lookers in the old days.
Yeah.
About how like you're getting older, you're getting softer around the edges.
Yeah.
But it's
look as good as you once used to.
Yeah, and it's just about getting lost in that old picture where you're like, man, I remember when I used to look young and I used to be like that. And
yeah.
So it was all kind of about, and After the Party might be the best song that they've ever written.
No, I will agree very much so that After the Party is up there.
And there was, I think you showed me the music video, but one of the top comments was from somebody, and it was like, 1,000 likes or whatever. But I think it was somebody said, "This music video makes me miss something I never experienced." It was, I'll find it. I have to find it.
That's great. That's a great comment.
It summed it up so perfectly in terms of what that band like kind of means.
So I agree with you. It's a band that it was very interesting because I felt like for a while I hadn't really discovered anything new to listen to. And again, you came through with them and suggested them to me. And I remember I told you I had listened to one of the albums and said, nah, it's just okay. And then like a couple of months later, I went back to it.
It grows. I
went back and I listened to it again. And I remember I said, okay, it's really coming together for me.
Yeah.
Which is always a great feeling when you find something new to connect with musically. But I really enjoyed it. And I don't know, that their whole genre grew on me. And what's the song that goes, and I will fuck this up? Is that Obituaries?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Obituaries.
So like to me, that song is probably up there for me with After the Party.
Mhm.
Um, and After the Party is great. Um,
Their show was amazing, though.
it was super fun, man. It was so much fun, and I've really enjoyed.
Don't you miss concerts?
Huh?
So don't you miss concerts?
Dude, 3 weeks, man. 3 weeks. I get to go to one. Woo! Uh, but I did really enjoy kind of like, you know, having this whole discography of stuff that was similar to the stuff that I grew up loving, like the punk music I grew up loving, but being able to kind of rediscover it now as an older person, it was a lot of fun. And I've really grown to love the band. And I haven't listened to them. I haven't listened to them in probably like 2 months, which means tomorrow my day will probably be filled with a lot of Menzingers.
Did you listen to Hello Exile?
Yeah, I listened to the whole album.
I love that last track on that album, Farewell Youth.
I don't remember I mean, I listened to the whole album, but I don't remember it specifically.
Yeah.
The single off of it that they released, I thought was great.
Yeah.
The America.
You're freaking me out.
Yeah, America, I love you, but you're freaking me out. Such a good line. I think it captivates.
Especially right now.
So much of what's going on in the last like year. Like,
yeah,
it hits home so well, that line. But speaking of kind of things that I don't know, I don't even remember how we got onto that, but
Gates.
Yeah. Oh, you mentioned the Levy stuff, and that's what it was. And I wanted to mention one more thing before we started wrapping up the now longer than the first 2 episodes. Third episode. I told you it was gonna happen, dude.
It's tough.
Dude, you get the 2 of us talking about music, man. It's not gonna hold back. We've been doing this our whole lives, and we love it, and it's super fun. I watched the Wolfpack Madison Square Garden show. I loved it so damn much, I watched it twice. And I will tell you right now that the comments from that show, because you had mentioned YouTube comments, that's what made me think of it. The comments from that show are so good. There were people that were like, one person had said, I've never even heard of this band, but I have watched this show like 3 times since quarantine started. Another person said, I can't believe this show is free. I feel like I'm stealing. Like the level and the musicianship and the rotation of bands. And then one guy pointed out that the cameraman shoots the entire thing with one camera in one take.
I didn't even realize.
Exactly.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but
you didn't notice it because, well, you didn't see it, but you're so focused.
I watched like the first 5 minutes, and it was one guy kind of walking around on stage, and I'm guessing that same guy is the one filming the whole.
Yeah, but it was great. It was awesome. No, he actually plays in the band. But the comments to the video are fantastic. It is a funk party. They are great musicians. I thoroughly, and like, I've seen the band live, and they were great. And I've known about them now for about like 3 or so years, and I've listened to probably, whatever, like maybe 20 or 25 of their songs. Like, it's probably what I had heard prior to kind of diving, or maybe even less than that. But I don't claim to be a Wolfpack expert in any sense of the imagination. Great band, exceptional musicians.
1512.
Yes, exactly. Perfect case in point. 1612 and Funky Duck, and Put It in My Pocket. Like, those were the songs that I was thinking of last week that I couldn't remember all of them. But great band. I highly encourage all of you, if you're looking for something kind of relaxing and fun in that kind of style of like almost Stevie Wonder, 70s fun, like, they're a great band. They're exceptional. I thoroughly encourage everybody to check it out. But I think we've kind of touched on everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you wanted to add to make the show 10 minutes longer than it's already been?
I think at this point, I think we hit basically everything. Wolfpack, I did listen to 1612. I listened to their studio stuff, which I was really kind of a fan of.
They're really good, aren't they?
Yeah, and I know there's other stuff in the mailbag. One thing, our anonymous requester asked me to talk about 4 Year Strong.
Go on. It's our show. We can do whatever the hell we want.
So, we didn't even talk about Sack Squatch.
No, we didn't.
But yeah, 4 Year Strong. Just I don't even know what to say about it at this point.
Just what's the album? What was the first? What was the second album?
The album that was requested was 4 Year Strong. Explains It All.
Oh, see, I would disagree. I would rather have. What was the album that we loved so much?
Rise or Die Trying.
Rise or Die Trying is way better than Explains It All. But Explains It All is a cover album. Check it out. It's fun. It's entertaining. Alanis Morissette, the Smashing Pumpkins. Check it out.
Everything 90s you could hope for.
Yeah, every 90s like top 10 hit you ever heard on kind of like a rock or indie or kind of rock indie pop station is covered on that album in a generally pretty unique fashion, and it's very fun. But yeah, Rise or Die Trying was an album that I could put on right now and rock out very hard to. So I if you've never heard of them, check it out.
Perfect.
But that's going to do it for episode 3, which according to my timestamp, I think we started at 11:05, which means we're now like an hour and 20, which is getting outrageous. But we're having fun talking about music, and we hope the people listening are enjoying it too. And if you don't listen to the whole thing, fine, but we hope that you get something out of it. We hope you find something new. And if you have suggestions, you have comments, hit us on YouTube, send it to us on Spotify. What's the email account we have again?
off.key.podcast@gmail.com.
There you go. Tell us why we suck or don't suck or what we should listen to. But we're having a lot of fun doing this, and we hope you're having fun listening. We know Matt Levy's having fun listening, and a couple other people, and as long as we're having fun doing it and you guys are having fun listening, we're going to keep doing it and keep trying to listen to new stuff and check out new things and expand our horizons. So, but anything else you want to add, man?
No, I think we're running out of time.
Yeah. So as you said last week, cue the music.